La siguiente conferencia va a ser en inglés y por favor a las personas que necesiten usar los audífonos, entonces les recomiendo que se los pongan ya. Esta conferencia es de Caren Althauser sobre experiencias internacionales en contenidos y estándares de interoperabilidad. Karen coordina el Joint Learning Network on Health Information Systems. Es una iniciativa de intercambio técnico entre países en desarrollo en torno a la construcción de sistemas de información de salud, iniciativa patrocinada por la Fundación Rockefeller. Ella actualmente es oficial del programa de sistemas de información en salud del programa PATH en Seattle y anteriormente trabajó para los proveedores de tecnologías de Hewlett Packard y de IDS. Bienvenida Karen y muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.
Buenos días. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to the conference and to Colombia today. I'm delighted to be here and to share international experiences from countries facing the very common challenges of using interoperability standards to connect healthcare stakeholders. Please bear with me for speaking in English. If I speak any more in Spanish, I will only be able to order us all beers. Cervezas para mis amigos, por favor. So I'll do the rest in English. I also tend to start talking faster and faster, which is hard on the translator, so I've prepared my comments. But please, anybody, wave your hands if I start to go too fast, or if you need me to order you another beer. It's working then, huh? The translation. I'm speaking today on the topic of adopting e-health interoperability standards. Many countries are facing this common challenge of how to connect the multiple information systems across the healthcare domain. I'm here today representing the Joint Learning Network for Universal Health Coverage and to share the work we're currently doing in developing topics and guidance around this information. So I'll provide a little bit of background on who and what the Joint Learning Network is, and then we'll share some previews of content from an ebook we are developing on connecting health information systems for better health. We'll take a quick look at understanding e-health's role in supporting care delivery and financial payments, look at the roles and interactions between the primary healthcare stakeholders, and look at practical steps for moving forward. The Joint Learning Network for Universal Health Coverage is an innovative, collaborative learning platform where practitioners and policymakers co-develop global knowledge that focuses on the practical how-tos of achieving universal health coverage. The JLN is a network of countries sharing common goal around improving the access to and the financing of healthcare in their countries, and to producing and sharing pragmatic information that is publicly available to any country facing similar challenges. It's important to note that the countries all have different health system models, and there is no advocacy of any particular approach. The common thread is that the countries have or are in the process of implementing a national insurance or health social protection program that ensures everyone has access to care without the risk of financial ruin. The network seeks to share approaches, lessons learned, and knowledge that can be used and adapted by any country to further their country-specific goals within their country-specific context. The JLN was started with the philosophy that countries have more to learn from each other than from the multitude of consultants and advisors from first world countries. A common saying within the network is that everyone has something to learn and everyone has something to share. The JLN is currently composed of 9 core member countries located in Africa and Asia, and they are Ghana, India, Indonesia, Kenya, Malaysia, Mali, Nigeria, the Philippines, and Vietnam. The JLN has existed since around 2010. And new this year, the JLN is open to new member countries joining that core group and becoming the learning laboratory countries, the ones that are testing out new ideas and sharing information back to be part of the global knowledge. More information is available on the JLN website, and the network would be delighted if Colombia has an interest to learn more about joining. Within the JLN, there's a country-led steering group that sets priorities and the overall direction. There are currently 5 technical initiatives or focus areas where countries are collaborating to develop and share knowledge. Those are around expanding coverage, around information technology, around primary health care and linking universal health care to the ideas around primary health care, provider payment methodologies and quality. And these are some of the examples of tools and knowledge that they are working on. Within the Joint Learning Network Information Technology Initiative, this is where PATH, where I work for, and our colleagues, Farm Access, which is another NGO based out of the Netherlands, are the technical facilitators for the IT initiative and sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation. So we work directly with ministers of health and national health insurers to foster a peer-to-peer learning network. In many countries, the IT insurance leaders or e-health leaders have no peers within their country, so the connections they are able to make with peers facing similar challenges in other countries can be quite valuable. I won't go into all these details, but I wanted to let you know that this is the types of the information that the IT initiative has produced, and to let you know where you can find it all on their website, which is jointlearningnetwork.org. There are a number of papers, how-to guides, recorded webinars that are available on topics related to creating health data dictionaries, how to develop and document insurance-related business processes and system requirements, and examining the IT requirements of different provider payment methodologies. In addition, the IT initiative has developed several tools that are available for public use. One of the first projects that the IT network undertook was documenting common business processes and system requirements for common insurance functions, such as enrollment, eligibility, claims management, payment collections, and provider management. The countries soon realized that regardless of their different healthcare financing models, the common insurance payer processes were very similar. The goal of these types of JLN projects is to provide countries a common starting point that any country can then adapt and use to their specific contents. So it avoids having to start from scratch. You can always pick up a common starting point and move from there. Another tool that was created is the Open HDD, which is a documentation tool for country-specific health data dictionaries. This is a place for countries to start towards interoperability by first defining common terms and language. The Open HDD tool has several countries' health data dictionaries in the tool that can be copied and adapted, again, providing a jumpstart to creating any new dictionaries. And one example of using that is we helped facilitate some work between Ghana and Kenya to develop a common electronic claims standard, and that is documented and available in the Open HDD. So that brings me to our current project, developing an ebook on connecting health information systems for better health by leveraging interoperability standards to link patients, policymakers, provider, and payer data. We are working on updates to the first draft of the ebook now and hope to have it available in the next couple of months. Interoperability between disparate e-health and m-health applications relies on system-wide adoption of standards. Our goal for this book is to address key implementation issues faced by countries on the journey towards developing national scale standards-based e-health infrastructure. So the outline for the book is to look at the value proposition behind national scale e-health infrastructure in a way that policymakers and IT professionals alike can readily understand. It sets the context by describing the experiences of countries at various stages of universal health coverage and e-health implementations, introduces the 4 key stakeholders of the healthcare system: patients, providers, payers, and policymakers, and describes a storytelling approach that may be employed to develop e-health standards specifications appropriate to a country's interoperability requirements, and describes practical steps for moving forward. This project was the result of JLN member countries expressing interest in learning more about how interoperability standards could help address UHC health financing transactions and the connections between payers and providers. The book is designed to be a companion piece to more broad-based reference material on e-health standards and interoperability, such as WHO has a national e-health strategy toolkit and also has a forthcoming WHO handbook on standardization and interoperability. So really we're referencing a lot of available information, but applying it in a more specific insurance context. The JLN book is not a formal research piece, but a casual approach to looking at country experiences and breaking down concepts and strategies to actionable steps. In order to collect country experiences and learnings, we interviewed 5 country representatives that provided candid perspectives of their country's approaches to e-health strategies and implementing e-health standards. The countries were South Africa, the Netherlands, Thailand, the Philippines, and Colombia. Mr. Ramiro Guerrero was gracious enough to share some of Colombia's experiences, and we are delighted to have his participation in the development and review of the draft e-book. Just to give some perspectives on the country profiles and some of the key health expenditures, there's a variety of national health financing models represented, differences in healthcare expenditures, and differing experiences and approaches with adopting standardization. So if we had to summarize a key message from the book in a single core piece of advice, it would be that a common standards-based national scale e-health infrastructure should simultaneously support both the care delivery and the health insurance payment processing. So let's first take a look at e-health's role as the general framework and how e-health impacts health. E-health is critical to operationalizing health interventions. So health interventions are what yields population health. E-health infrastructure is what enables us to operationalize those health interventions. The health interventions generate person-centric transactional data, and that data can be aggregated to develop population-level health metrics. And the population health metrics inform both the health interventions and the e-health infrastructure that operationalizes them. So there are 2 key roles played in the e-health infrastructure. First, the e-health infrastructure meters the health system. Person-centric transactions, if they are captured in a standards-based computable format, provide us with data we need for supporting continuity of care, health systems management, and insurance payment processing. Secondly, the e-health infrastructure provides a mechanism to exert process controls upon the very system it meters. A health system that is metered and has feedback loops can set itself on a path of continuous quality improvement. This can be incredibly impactful over time. It is worth emphasizing the importance of scale. Our e-health interoperability strategy allows us to go to scale. And only through scale do we actually move the dial on improving population health. Many disjointed point solutions just won't do this. And so why do we really care about standards? We care about e-health standards because we care about health. Successful health interventions rely on continuity of care. Continuity of care depends on interoperability between systems, and interoperability is achieved by standardization. There's a crucial point to make here that there is no interoperability without standards. Some could argue that point-to-point integration between two systems may be implemented without either party adopting standards, and this is true. Interoperability, however, can be thought of as a many-to-many integration, where the integrating parties do not know ahead of time who they will be connecting with. To do this, there must be a pre-agreement regarding how the connectivity will be achieved. This pre-agreement is accomplished via the adoption of standards. We can look at standards for healthcare grouped into 5 categories. There are care guidelines, such as a country's maternal care guidelines. There's content standards, and you can think of these as the list of fields on a paper form. There are coding standards. You can think of these as the allowable values within a field, such as specifications for sex, or these would be where ICD-10 code sets would fit. Communication standards are the message exchange standards, such as HL7, and confidentiality standards, which help manage privacy, security, patient consent. We go into these in a little more detail in the book and also reference where there's other additional information available. What we try to do here is to provide a little more guidance on how do you go about thinking about these, how do you select what's right for your country and your context. So let's take a look at who the key stakeholders are, the 4 Ps. We look at the viewpoints of policymakers, payers, providers, and patients in order to help define where and what kind of standards we need to operationalize healthcare transactions. Some of the comments in the first draft of the ebook have suggested that we also should add a 5th P for population, which I like because it starts with a P, but we might also say that the population is represented by a group of patients. It's exciting to see at this conference today that you've assembled representatives representing all of these groups. Please remember, if your primary role is one of policymaker, payer, or provider, that you all can and should also represent the viewpoint of patients, as we all at some point are also patients in the healthcare system. So from the patient's viewpoint, is often as a care seeker and a care recipient, and as a customer to the health insurer, and potentially as an influencer of policy through voting. And we can look at the things the patient typically wants to know. What is my health coverage? Who's my primary care provider? What services am I eligible for? How much does my health care cost? If we look at the provider's viewpoint, it is often as a regulated service provider, the care provider for patients, and a customer of provider services. It's the supplier. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm the wrong one here. The provider is the care provider of services and a supplier to the payer. Providers often need to know who is their population of patients, what is their health status, what are their interactions been with the patients, what are their care plans, how effective are their operations. The view of the payer is also as a regulated service through the policymaker, as a care funder and often a care coordinator to the patient, and a customer of provider services. Payers often need to know who is their population of beneficiaries, what is their health status, what care delivery network have I impaneled, and how effective are my operations. The policymaker's viewpoint is to regulate coverage, what services are provided in the standard set of services, how to regulate providers and pricing, and how to maximize the health of the overall population for what they have available to spend. Policymakers need to know who's the overall population and identify individuals, what is their health status, what health system resources are available, and how effective are the present policies. This is rather obvious looking at the key stakeholders and their roles within the healthcare system, but mapping out the information needs between the stakeholders can be used to help define what transactions happen between them and where standardization is needed to best operationalize those transactions. It also should be noted that countries may need to, and often need to, prioritize where to focus and take an incremental approach. The eHealth infrastructure footprint is different for each country. Some countries have focused on UHC initiatives and have made investments for implementing the infrastructure necessary to support provider payments. And they tend to focus then in the green box around the relationship between the payers and the providers in those transactions. For other countries, the focus is more directly supporting care delivery networks, and this is the area where eHealth investments have been made, and that's more in the red box, the focus around actual care delivery between providers and patients. And that's where you also see, based on number of donor projects, individual silos of things that are impacting care provision, but that may not fit into an overall eHealth strategy. Growing sophistication of the overall healthcare delivery and financing system will drive increased requirements for interoperability, but also provide increased value in the capabilities that can be derived from consistent connected data. So back to our key message one more time, that countries should leverage common standards-based eHealth infrastructure to support both care delivery and health insurance payment processing. So we'll look at a couple examples of how to make this work. If a country is investing in payment-led initiatives, as they often are if they're focused on UHC efforts, they should also take into consideration the care delivery requirements. For example, if a country is implementing a capitation payment scheme, the most basic level provider registry information and client registry information can provide sufficient information to support payment transactions. Common eHealth components can be shared to support both the financial payments and the basics of care delivery. In another example, if a country is investing in care delivery-led initiatives, they should also consider the insurance or payment requirements. For example, if a country is rolling out an HIV care program, they will need to support person-level care, which requires knowing who received the care, such as a client registry, and what care was received, such as a health record and terminology service for coding standards. When it comes time to start writing person-centric health transactions to a shared health record, ensure that the insurance billing codes readily map to the clinical codes, for example, ICD-10. Ideally, the clinical codes should be used as the insurance billing codes, and this will help with interoperability. And just some final thoughts for countries is to look for ways to leverage what you have and what capabilities you can add in an incremental approach. Some countries have quite sophisticated health insurance infrastructures, but weak care delivery eHealth systems, and some are the opposite, depending on where they've focused and where the investment's been coming from. A strong health insurance transaction processing capability can be leveraged as a first step towards person-centric electronic health records. Opportunistically, financial incentives or disincentives may be employed to strengthen the coding on physician claim submissions so that over time this usefulness of the data will grow. Thank you for your time. Gracias.